Okay, so this panel is about the future. Over the last 2 days, we have talked a lot about problems. We've talked a lot about various issues and potential solutions. So I think what's important now is, especially given the name of this whole project, We Unify. I'd like to steer the conversation towards unification and the future. We don't want to black pill everybody. We don't want people to think that there is no hope and there's just all these problems and there aren't solutions. So let's talk about a positive vision for the future and what practical things people can do in various areas so that they can get involved with this. So who would like to start?
I'll jump in on that one.
Okay.
I'll jump in. Yeah, there we go. So I think the first step is don't buy what they're selling. They want to sell you division. They want to get you angry at your neighbors. They want to get you angry at other people. You saw yesterday, there wasn't much of a turnout today, but there was a protest against this event. Exactly. And those people, they didn't even know what they were angry about. It had nothing to do with what was going on in here. But you can always find those people, try to communicate with people if they're going nuts. Obviously avoid that. But finding, common ground and just don't buy it. Every time people start to unify on one ground, they'll come out with something new for you to be divided and angry about. We have currently right now these protests that are happening all over Canada about conflict that's happening overseas, and they're using that to divide. If it wasn't that conflict, it was another conflict before, and then it was COVID. So yeah, I recommend people just don't buy what they're selling. Look at what's actually happening. We have so much really in common. We actually have way less to fight over than we have in common, so stick with that.
There's another thing too. We have to think about what it is that we're hopeful for. Like when you talk about having hope, what is it that you have hope for? Is it that things are going to turn out exactly the way you imagine they will be if things were great for you? Right? Is that what we should be hopeful for? Should I be hopeful that all of my COVID debt will be settled, my restaurant will be prosperous, and I'll just make hamburgers for the rest of my life? Tamara said it. What we should be hopeful for is thy will be done. It doesn't matter what happens if we realize, first off, that everything happens exactly the way that it's supposed to, and our job is just to do what we know is right. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. We can't be black-pilled or we can't be left hopeless if we're putting our hope in something greater than ourselves. And that's, yeah. And that's what's kept me mostly out of, depression for these last few years, is that every time something happens that I think is a disaster and it's so bad for me, we get through it, and then I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, maybe getting hit by that train was actually a good thing, right? Well, I instead of having that Jeep, now I have a diesel Jeep and I like it better. So there's a silver lining to everything. But I just want to make sure that everyone knows that when you're hopeful, your hope has to be placed in something that's bigger than ourselves. Otherwise, you could end up being let down.
I think one of the other things that we miss is how quickly we adapt to what's going on. And it's one of the reasons the media paints, a crisis every day, because when you get into this crisis state. But think about what it was like 12 months ago. Much worse. Like, you couldn't talk to people 2 years ago about anything. Now they're very much open. And people becoming aware is a one-way street. Okay? No one's going from being aware to falling asleep now. Okay, it's a complete one-way street. And one of the things really to understand about how we function as humans is a lot of time resistance in us not wanting to do things, procrastinating, is really just lack of clarity. We don't know what to do. But when you start thinking, I'm just going to start, because you don't need to know where the destination is, just start walking. And then, you'll find your way there. And that's where faith is so important. Because it really just allows you to get going. And the other thing is that people talk about laziness, and laziness a lot of the time is just exhaustion. Okay? It's just the mind spinning over continuously. So the thing really that's really powerful is just really connect with yourself, connect with nature, connect with your connection to that that's more than you. And you'll be guided. And the future's there, and on a quiet day, the new world that's going to birth, you can hear her whispering to you.
I think we all know that this is a spiritual war.
Yes.
And again, I think that if we focus all of our attention on what the other person is doing, we're missing it. Our focus should be is, who am I? What side of the fence am I on? Arthur, I was hoping you would tell that story about everybody's on the fence and God is starting to shake the fence. And you have to fall off on one side or the other. Which side are you going to fall off on? You know, when you were talking about the media, what makes the difference is those people with integrity. So are we doing everything we can to be in our integrity? Are we being the change we want to see in the world? I believe that when we're at our highest, when we're most godlike, is when we're creative beings. They want us to be in a state of reactivity. Our job is to be creative, not reactive. And to be creative, I don't know if you know the little secret to that. What's the difference between the two words creative and reactive? It's where the C is located. If you want to create, you have to see first. So what do you want to create? What does that look like?
Okay, I've thought of what I think is going to be an interesting and enlightening question. But to make sure I have something correct first, if you're a parent, put your hand up. Okay. If you're a grandparent, keep your hand up. Okay, it's a good percentage. Okay, so we're talking about the future. And depending on how far you look into the future, none of us are going to be here to witness all of it, but we'll be here for some of it. But our children, future children, grandchildren, and so on are always going to be there for the future, as long as we really, really don't like totally mess it up. So my question is, what Canada do you want your children or grandchildren to inherit?
The one I grew up in.
Okay. What does that mean?
Means we need to bring back arcades.
That was exactly what I meant. Wow.
Yeah.
All joking aside, that is something.
Yeah.
You know, when I was a kid, things were, of course, a lot different, and I'm not nearly as old as some of you. I mean, you can tell. But things were different. I knew if I stepped out of line, my parents would deal with me. I believed in, or I knew the difference between right and wrong. We could see that plainly in front of us. You know, we could go to the arcade across town by ourselves and not worry about our safety. It was a completely different time. And I think one of the reasons, besides those type of issues that stem from ethics and values, we hadn't yet slidden into this political apathy where the bureaucracy became our new gods, right? That's happened in the last 20, 30 years. And if we need to blame anyone for that, it's really ourselves, because we control our democracy, or we're supposed to. And you know, it it feels to me, although I guess I was smaller, so the world was a lot bigger, it feels to me that people were a lot freer back then. We did more things with our family, and I suppose technology played a role in limiting that, but that it was a different Canada that I remember when I was a kid, and that's what I want to leave for my kids.
I love it.
Only better.
I love it.
I want a Canada with a moral foundation. You know, some of the arguments I've heard about the charter, you know, it's this, there's lots of legal arguments about it. It's not strong enough, whatever. And what I say is that the charter is not a legal document, it's a moral document. And we ought to treat it that way. The state of Louisiana this week, I don't know if you know, they've just mandated the 10 Commandments be hung in every classroom in the state. We need to get back to what's fundamental. And that needs to be the foundation that we build everything else on. We've lost that foundation. And so I want to reclaim that. I think we need to have conversations about right and wrong and good and evil. I love that Grant Abraham's book is called The Battle for the Soul of Canada. And one of his criticisms, he says, we're having all of the wrong conversations in the shallow end of the pool. It's time that we had some serious conversations about just this question: what kind of a Canada do we want?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to leave them a Canada where the media is not funded by the taxpayer.
Okay.
There's a massive conflict of interest with the fact that the CBC is handed $1.4 billion every year to propagandize us as citizens that are supposed to be making, we're supposed to be making the decisions, we're supposed to be informed, and we're being misinformed. And yeah, it's not just them. The government's also funding all the other major players in media, and I'd like to see that come to an end.
I want to elaborate on that a little bit. That's a really good point, and this is something that's been on my mind for quite a while. I want to leave them a Canada where our systems aren't influenced by the financial beneficiaries to those systems. For instance, healthcare. Let's talk about healthcare. Do we have healthcare in this country, or do we have a system by which pharmaceutical companies can access tax dollars through legislation? Is that what we have? Alberta spends $23 billion a year on healthcare. $23 billion a year. It's not in the lobbyists' best interest for us to be healthy, because then they're not selling us pills and medical supplies. Our prison system in Alberta, we have men in jail right now almost 900 days without being proven guilty in a court of law, lives destroyed, and if you think about it, the financial beneficiaries to keeping people in jail are the ones that earn money from, or tax money, by running those systems. They're private corporations. And this is in every single thing. All of the extra government organizations that we deal with all access our tax dollars. They do things that aren't to our benefit in order to access more of them, including the media. And we're left like looking around being like, why is everything broken? It's because we're letting the people who financially benefit from the brokenness make the rules. And we need to change that for our kids' sake.
Mm-hmm. David, I know you're a fellow Brit.
Yeah.
But do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I just want to add the love that I've felt from just every one of you. I mean, I started working with BC Rising because I could just feel the energy. When I spoke to them, they wanted to make a change, and it was not from anger. It was from self-reflection, it's from looking inside, and it's from love, and they wanted the best. And it wasn't selfish, and it wasn't ego. And personally, I want a fair and just society. And I'd love to be able to visit Canada without
Trepidation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without, what I witnessed from the UK, we had it bad, but like, wait, you're looking over here thinking, oh my God. Like, I got friends in Melbourne, and that was, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's
Yeah, my brother moved to Australia a couple of years ago, and I was like, bro, what? Like, we're a bit different in that regard, but hey.
Yeah, so, I mean, I just, I spent a lot of my time the last couple of months helping the people of Canada because, we're really all getting attacked at the same time. So whatever happens anywhere, I mean, and I just think Canada is ripe to learn from history. Because up to now, the one thing we've learned from history is that we don't learn from history. Okay? But that is an incredible awareness. Because then the question is, why don't we learn from history? Yeah, and if we start, that's part of it, and if we start asking ourselves those questions, and it really is the quality of the questions.
Yeah. I think I have an answer to that question because I've thought about it myself. So it's interesting because now I'm an adult. I find myself infinitely more interested in history than I ever was as a kid. And I don't think I'm unique in that. I think the main reason is because in most schools, when you learn history, you learn the what and the when, but you don't learn the why and the how. So you learn certain facts and dates, and this battle happened and this happened, but there's no discussion of the psychology of the population. You can talk about World War I and World War II and this battle and this happened, and everyone imagines, of course, they would have been the good guy. They would have been the one who's fought against the Nazis and freed the slaves and ended communism and stopped every genocide and so on. Statistically, most people would have been either on the wrong side or just apathetic or scared. That's the reality, which is not something nice to think about. So I think that's why people don't think about it. But I think when you put yourself in those positions and you reflect on some of the things that are happening in our modern society, and you're just aware of that, and you're aware of the tendency for people to, as I said, go with the majority, or to not speak up because they feel that little pang of fear, to self-censor, to be so worried about their job or their money or certain things that they're imagining that they just don't take that courage, they don't take that step, and over the course of time, it metastasizes, and idea pathogens can spread very, very quickly, and as it's been said, all it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. I was going to save this for my sort of end point, but I think I'm going to raise it right now. And one thing that's really struck me throughout this weekend at this conference and just looking at this situation over the last few years is every single person in this room is an ordinary person. And what makes people extraordinary is not necessarily some God-given talent or gift or, something random. It's action. It's the action. It's the decision to say, you know what, I'm going to do something. Right? But that's the separation. That's the separation. I mean, anyone could have started a YouTube channel.
Anybody
Maybe
could
they
do
wouldn't
what I
have
do.
done it as well as you've done, but any person could have said, you know what, this is weird stuff going on. Let me turn on this camera or just grab my phone. We've all got video cameras all the time. Let me just start it. Anyone can start a podcast. Anyone can write a book. Anyone can, speak to the school board or raise something in your workplace. Whatever it may be, big or small, that is the thing that makes the difference. And I think it's so important to recognize that because I talk to a lot of people and so many people just think I'm just one person. I'm one guy, I'm one gal. What can I do? And one person can do a lot.
Well, what can I do, said 8 billion people.
Yeah.
I mean, if I can say, one of the quotes that really moved me many, many years ago, and I say it all the time, and the quote went along the lines of, imagine 30, 40, 50 years from now. Okay, you've lived a long, prosperous, wonderful life, and you're there. How much would you give to be where you are now? How much would you give to have this day? And would you have any regrets? What didn't you do? What did you want to do? Okay? But you've got that opportunity now, right in this moment. Those things that you didn't do in that reality, you can make up for now. And that thought experiment in my mind has driven me to do so much about what I've done. Because it's much easier to sit back and, oh, I can't do anything because I've got a job, I've got a family and all these things. But they're the reasons to do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think really just take a few moments. Yeah. When you leave here, just ask yourself, what am I going to do? What am I going to do next? And just know that you literally can do anything.
And you know what? Maybe this is your second chance. Maybe this is. Maybe it is the first day of the rest of your life.
Yep. So I've got a question. Do it. Honestly, do it. I hear people say, oh, everyone's got a podcast. I'm like, bro, like not even 0.1% of the population has a podcast. It's not saturated. Nothing is saturated. Yeah, keep on creating, people. I'm going to invert one of the questions I asked on the previous panel and aim this towards the future. And I want to ask, what are the unique strengths and opportunities that you think Canada has for this century? What are some unique things about Canada that are going to make it win?
We have Alberta.
Hey.
I like that. I like that. I think Canada has tremendous resources, and we are not utilizing those resources. And when I say resource, I'm not talking just about natural resources. We have human resources. We have great people with great imaginations. I mean, all of our comedians, or all of America's comedians, come from Canada. But there's so much that we just have not yet exploited, and for many different reasons. And I like to point the finger largely at the government at the moment for not allowing the market to function. If you tune into my channel, I don't just talk about liberty, I also talk about the market, because those two are intertwined. You're not going to have a market without liberty. And the market functions best when the government just gets out of the way and lets it function. So Canada will excel.
There's another thing we have too. We have a system, albeit it is a little broken and battered and tattered, but we have a system that will allow us to change things if we do the work.
Yes.
And a lot of places don't have that.
Very true.
I think we have two incredible stories of Canadians. One is Terry Fox. The other one is the Freedom Convoy.
Absolutely.
And I think that when we remember those stories, that it inspires us about what we can do. I've said to Mara and Chris is that I think that if the history of Canada is told the right way, is that they're going to have their bronze statues on Parliament Hill.
Yeah.
Well, I would say, coming from a little island of 65 million people, you've got a lot of space.
For real.
Right?
real.
And you have got a lot of resources. And I mean, I remember many years ago, I went on a tube journey on the Underground in the UK, and a gentleman just started talking to me. And if any of you have been in London, the Londoners go, "What the hell, are you mad?" Like, and it jarred me. My response to a stranger talking to me on the tube jarred me. And I went back to the office and I booked a 6-month flight around the world. because this guy was an Australian guy, and it was just normal for him to come up and talk to me, just someone. And that's what I experience when I'm in Canada. And that's what I think is one of your greatest gifts. You hug, you go up to talk to people, there's no awkwardness,
But it's nowhere near like it used to be. We need to get back to that.
well,
We need to be able to get back to talking to people
make it happen.
and not be afraid
Yeah,
how they're going to react or how you're going to react.
there's your one thing. There's your what? Let's make it happen. You guys have the power.
Can I just mention, I went to a Soji rally, and we were in Parksville, little Parksville, and as you walk down the street, after you walk around, there's a whole pile of people screaming, haters, haters, haters after us. And I walked up to the first one, and I said, where's I your coffee? Could I please buy your coffee? No, I hate us. I said, oh, who's hating now? And I carried on down to the and then I got to one lady, she said, what? I said, may I buy your coffee? When? She said, tomorrow. I said, okay. Where? So we went to Quality, and we met for an hour. I didn't change my mind on the Soji, but we had a good conversation. Her business card is on my microwave, and I prayed for her every day and said, God, why can't I call her again? But I realized the people I run into at the SOS and places that I see regularly, I split this into some thinking, I should say, can I buy your coffee?
There's your one thing. There's your one
great.
thing. The when I look across what we've been working on, we see an epidemic of apathy. Okay? And if that one thing changes, there's going to be a tidal wave of change. Yeah. And it's really about love, like connecting, just being open.
Absolutely.
Zubi, before you move on to the next question, I just thought of the third narrative that we have.
Please go.
Archer Pulaski.
Yes. Following on from your point, Ted, I think something that's important to remind people about, it's one of those things that's obvious, but I think it's very worth stating, which is that the world from this time onward is more interconnected by a factor of billions than humanity ever has been. This is my first time in Canada in over 20 years. The fact that I'm happy to be here. No, thank you. But truly, I mean, it's the fact that I came here and anyone knows who I am blows my mind. The fact that I'm seeing people and I'm meeting people and connecting with people and I've seen their stories. I saw Arthur's video, multiple ones. I saw the Freedom Convoy and was supporting that from thousands of miles away. And if you just go back a few decades ago, we would all be totally disconnected, right? People in the UK, in Australia, in Germany, like you'd have no idea. No one would have any idea really what's going on in all of these other places. And from now on, I know that the internet and social media can be annoying, for sure. But on the opposite end, just the fact that we now have billions of people across every country in the world, except North Korea, sadly. But I think that's going to change this century, by the way. We just have so much access to information and people and connections and true social network. And there's some things that are certainly scary about that, but it's a real sea change just in our species. So I think it's important to remember that something like the Freedom Convoy, that is an amazing story for Canada, but that is something that sent shockwaves around the globe. Everywhere, in every single nation, they saw that. So what started with just a handful of people in Canada and then expanded to several thousand people in Canada, that was seen by millions, if not billions of people around the world. So the way things can ripple outward now is it's mind-blowing. Okay, a question I do want to ask, and we've touched on this a little bit already, is given we're coming towards the end of the conference and we're talking about the future, is what is one piece of, I'd like to get from each panelist, one piece of tangible, actionable advice in whatever realm that people can take home and something that they can do. One piece of actionable advice.
I'd say something small like buying someone a coffee. Don't try to be a superhero. Don't try to take on something that's too big. Try doing something that's very small, like talking to somebody on the tube, talking to somebody on the bus, talking to somebody at the grocery store. Things like that is how we unify. This is how we bring people back together. Just being the good old Canada that we used to be. Do random things. Buy somebody a beer at the pub. I'll be doing that tonight. But yeah, just find something small that you feel that you can do, that's in your power to do, rather than something that would take you months to even prepare to do. It's something very tiny, and I think small things end up turning into big things, and you just watch it develop. Once you get the ball rolling, it doesn't feel like you're doing anything anymore. It just feels like you're just going for the ride.
Love it.
I want to go last. I have something I want to do.
So, for me, I was reading something the other day, and it really sort of, it's one of these elusive, obvious things, and it said, when you learn to ride a bike, and you literally finally got that moment, it wasn't that moment. It was all the moments up to that moment. So if I then look, I'm sitting here now, what brought me here, and then I go back to all those sliding doors, it was something like, well, in fact, here it was just attending a Zoom call. And then I met a number of people from BC Rising. Erica then sends me an email, and then there's this just cascade of little moments. We always think that big change comes from big action. Doesn't. Look at the convoy. It was a phone call. You don't know any one of those little moments that you could do tonight, tomorrow, next week that could have you doing something truly amazing. And that's what Clyde said was so powerful. It's the little things that make the difference. Okay? If you think about someone sick and you can buy them a store-bought chicken or you can cook it at home, that cooking at home, that little thing makes all the difference. It shows your love. So it's really, just think, I'm going to take one step. That's it.
I don't know about this cooking at home stuff.
Just tell them you cooked it at home.
Yeah. I really don't know that I'm the best person to give advice. I mean, I pour coffee and make hamburgers for a living now. But if I had to say anything, I would say be okay with being of service to other people. I never really understood that before. I spent 20 years in the energy industry in Alberta, and it was always about me. I was always the boss and doing things, and everyone did everything for me. And then I bought this restaurant, and all of a sudden, I'm like wiping up when people spill, and I'm pouring their coffee and listening to their complaints, which are very few and far between, by the way. But I found myself in a position where I was a servant. And my whole life, I was like, that's demeaning, that's below me. But it isn't. It's one of the most fulfilling things you can do. And so when this all happened and COVID reared its ugly, not even COVID, when the government reared their ugly head and they did what they did, and I was put in a position where I needed to stand up for myself, I was thrown into a situation where I had to be of service to other people because they kept on, first of all, they came to my restaurant because it was the only place open in Alberta. And business is good when you're the only business. But the other part of that was they also had stories to share, and they hadn't been able to share stories with anybody because everything was closed and there was nobody to visit with and talk to. So I heard all of the heart-wrenching stories about the impacts of COVID and the restrictions and the mandates that people weren't hearing, the media wasn't talking about. And that switched me from a mindset of, I need to elevate myself and get as much for me and have people doing stuff for me as I can, to I can use my time and energy to be of service to these people who have nobody else to advocate for them. So I think that's a really, that's what I'll leave you with. Be okay with being a servant to those around you. It actually feels pretty good.
Amen.
So I had one more slide that I forgot to show. I'm wondering if the AV people could put that up. I'm wondering if you would read that with me.
That's right here.
Would you all mind standing
Let's take them to church.
We'll have to move to the side.
and holding the hands of the people beside you? And if we could do this together, I think it's going to be lovely. So, the Freedom Pledge. Before my Creator, my family, and my community, I declare, I will rise up, speak up, and disobey harmful and tyrannical orders, whether they come from a domestic or foreign entity. I will stand in my power and authority and reclaim my innate rights and what has been unlawfully and immorally taken from me, my family, and my community. I will resist any attempt by government or otherwise to divide people or communities from each other, or to subjugate any people to discrimination or harassment based on ethnicity, faith, bodily autonomy, or freedom of choice. If the enemies of freedom come for anyone's children, my neighbors, my community, or my nation, I will resist. I will never surrender my rights nor those of my children and community.
And on that note, massive thank you to our panelists. And to all of the other speakers. We've had some brilliant speakers. Thank you to all of the conference sponsors. And thank you to all of the organizers. Massive round of applause. Is this mic okay? Is this one, everyone can hear me okay? All right, I'm just gonna close this out with a few words. I didn't necessarily know what I was going to encounter and expect this weekend. This is my first time, as I've mentioned before, doing an event in Canada. I had some initial trepidation about coming to Canada after seeing the last few years. I actually had a few people telling me, are you sure you should go? They might not let you in, they might not let you out. You know, they went a little bit crazy. They're super woke over there. Oh, and you're going to the West, like, man, Zuby, you're going to get attacked. They're not going to like you. What I have experienced is just beautiful, wonderful, incredible people. I look around this room and I see so many wonderful souls. True kindness, true unity, true love for country, love for one another, love for family, love for community. And that is the reason why we care about freedom. That's the reason why we fight for it. It's not just some political concept. It's our fundamental right as human beings made in the image of God. That's why freedom matters. We are supposed to be free. We are not meant to be chained up and shackled and enslaved by one another, by the government, by anybody. So I just want to offer you all some words of encouragement. Continue to be kind. Continue to be awesome. Continue to have that worldwide famous Canadian politeness. But continue to keep that fire burning and to continue fighting for what is good and what is truthful and what is righteous. God bless you all. Thank you, and God bless Canada. I appreciate it.